You're going to be single like this forever. I saw my classmate who stole my fiancée from me 12 years ago. But now, I was no longer single. Let me introduce you to my kid. What? And the moment he saw my child, he completely lost it. My name is John. I'm 40 years old. I'm an ordinary office worker with a wife and kids. Back in middle school, I was shy and preferred reading books in the school library over playing with friends. Books gave me knowledge and I enjoyed immersing myself in their worlds. So, I would always read in the library. One day, a girl approached me. You come to the library every day, right? Is that book interesting? Do I know you? The girl who spoke to me, her name was Emily. We weren't in the same class, but she was well known, so I remembered her name. She had a mature quality that didn't seem typical for a classmate, and she was very popular with the boys. She was the school's it girl. I was surprised that she spoke to someone as unremarkable as me. Even though there were other boys around. I must have looked suspicious as I glanced around. She laughed at me. Hee, of course I'm asking you. I'm Emily. What's your name? I'm John. Do you want to borrow this book? I just finished it. It's really good. I finished the last line of the book and handed it to her. She accepted it happily, her face lit up with a big smile. Thank you. I'd been really curious about this book. I was debating whether to borrow it after returning my other book. But then I saw you reading it and had to ask. If you say it's good, then I'll definitely read it. It seemed my opinion convinced her to borrow the book. It turned out she was more interested in the book than in me. Thank you so much. See you later. Since it was after school, she thanked me and left with the book. To me, she was like a whirlwind rather than the it girl. Suddenly appeared, borrowed the book, and left just like that. But she was the first person to ever ask me about a book, so I didn't mind at all. Other classmates were more into playing soccer or baseball outside. They had no interest in the world of books. I never thought I would meet someone who shared my hobby, but you never know. From that day on, Emily would talk to me every day in the library. I'm just like you, John. I love books and don't fit in with the others. For some reason, everyone avoids me. I thought it was probably because Emily was too high above everyone, making them feel intimidated. She wasn't aware of her own appeal, but it was surprising to learn that Emily, like me, struggled to fit in with our classmates. But you were different, John. Would you be my friend? Of course. Yay! Seeing Emily so happy, I thought it was a bit over the top, but I was glad my first friend in middle school was her. We became friends, but we didn't realize that someone had been watching us. The person who jealously observed our friendship was my classmate, Mike. Hey, what's your deal with the it girl? I saw you talking with her in the library yesterday. The next day, when I arrived at school, Mike, who had apparently been waiting for me, suddenly confronted me and asked. I was surprised, but I told him we were just friends. He snorted at me. Friends with the it girl? You must be kidding. There's no way you two are even on the same level. Mike and his entourage laughed at me. He loved soccer and often played it with his friends outside. He thought that I was creepy for always reading books, and would often bully me, but today it was worse than usual. He had never mentioned Emily before today, so it was clear he saw us in the library and decided to bring it up just to mess with me. Her name's Emily, alright? If you like her, why don't you talk to her? She's looking for friends. Of course, I know her name. Just because you're getting close to her, don't think you're better than me. Watch, I'll take her from you. I honestly was just friends with Emily, and Mike was wildly mistaken. But she was my first real friend. I already had to deal with him interrupting my reading, and now he wanted to ruin my friendship with Emily? I had a bad feeling. And that feeling proved correct. After school, as I headed to the library, Mike followed me, grinning. What? Why are you following me? Because if you go to the library, Emily shows up too. I wanted to point out that Emily came to the library because she loved books, not because of me, but it seemed too much trouble to explain. So I just let him be. When I reached the library, I returned the book I had borrowed. As I picked out a new book from the shelves, Emily appeared. "John." She immediately ran towards me when she saw me, but Mike stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Whoa, you startled me. Who are you?" "I'm Mike. I'm friends with John, and I've heard a lot about you, Emily. I came along because I wanted you to recommend some books to me." "Really? Nice to meet you, Mike." Emily seemed to believe him completely. As I watched, annoyed at Mike's lie, Emily started recommending books to him. I should get going. Not wanting to interrupt, I tried to leave, but Emily noticed and tried to call me back, only to be blocked again by Mike. "Aren't there any other good books?" Well. Emily started looking for other books upon Mike's request. Meanwhile, I left the library. From that day on, Emily and Mike grew closer. I continued to read at a distance, trying not to let it bother me. Though it was complicated, I didn't want to restrict Emily, who just wanted friends, so I kept quiet and let the days pass. One day, something happened. As usual, I went to the library after school and found Emily already there, but Mike was nowhere to be seen. I thought about how he usually follows me and goes straight to Emily, but then Emily, with her head down, told me something. "Mike confessed to me earlier." "What? He did?" Hearing this from Emily, I thought Mike was surprisingly bold. However, I immediately felt my heart race, wondering what her response to his confession was. I asked myself why I was so anxious, but I couldn't find an answer. Emily continued, oblivious to my thoughts. "But I turned him down. Talking with him is fun, but he seems disinterested when we discuss books. I guess he doesn't like my conversations." Mike was never a book lover. He couldn't keep up with her passion for books, not even for Emily. I was relieved to hear she rejected him. I began to realize that maybe, just maybe, Mike said he wouldn't give up, but there's someone else I'm interested in. Someone else. I avoided her gaze, pretending not to notice her intense look. "How would you know? You've only just met Mike." "Maybe in the future." "John, are you really okay with that?" Emily looked like she was about to cry. I felt like a terrible person. But my answer was clear. If it makes you happy and you enjoy it, then it's fine. Mike's persistent, and he seems to really like you. I couldn't understand why I was supporting someone like Mike and pushing Emily towards him. And then, Emily started crying. Her big eyes overflowed with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm going to leave now." I didn't mean to make her cry, but I did. Feeling awful, I left the library. After that day, I stopped going to the library. I either bought books from the bookstore or borrowed them from the public library to avoid running into Emily. Then one day, as if he had noticed, Mike said something to me. "Did you and Emily have a fight? You haven't been to the library at all." "Well, it's great for me, having her all to myself." "Good for you." Mike, oblivious to the fact that I had made Emily cry, tried to gloat, but I wished them well. Mike looked disappointed, expecting me to react differently. I knew he just wanted to provoke me, so I didn't take the bait. However, deep down, I didn't feel good about it. Emily and I stopped talking, not even making eye contact when we passed each other in the halls. Mike continued his attempts to win Emily over, but even by the time we graduated, she never reciprocated his feelings. I went through a bitter middle school experience. When I was 28, I got engaged to Sarah, whom I had been dating since college. Life was going well, both at work and in my personal life. "Hey, John. Long time no see." "Mike." My face involuntarily tensed up upon seeing Mike for the first time since middle school. We had run into each other on the street. "Is she your girlfriend?" "I'm Sarah, John's fiancée." Sarah replied politely to Mike, shaking hands. Mike looked impressed. Then he put his arm around my shoulder and whispered so Sarah couldn't hear. "She's gorgeous and polite. How did you score someone like her? Just like with Emily, she's way out of your league. We've been together since college. How about you and Emily? You kept trying, didn't you?" I naturally thought of Emily and asked. Mike looked genuinely downhearted and said, "Emily. We went to the same high school, but she never gave me a chance." So, to get over her, introduce me to Sarah. What? You don't introduce your fiancée to someone else. You're always so awkward with romance. Don't try to outdo me. It's annoying. His words about me being awkward stung. It reminded me of our bitter middle school days, and I felt a pang of pain. But now wasn't the time to feel down. I pulled away from Mike and stood in front of Sarah. If you try anything with my fiancé, you won't get away with it. Whoa, calm down. Sarah's a really lucky girl. John, you're worrying too much. You two are friends from middle school, right? Let's find a place to sit and chat. I'd love to hear about John's middle school days. How about that cafe over there? Sarah, you're so considerate. Sarah, misunderstanding us as friends and wanting to make the most of our reunion, tried to arrange a conversation. I wanted to stop her, but Mike flattered her, and we ended up spending time at the cafe together. Since Sarah and I were engaged, I thought I might be overreacting and didn't worry about them chatting. I never imagined I would regret it later. Sorry. It's all my fault. Please don't blame Sarah. Let me take responsibility. A few months later, Mike showed up at my house with Sarah for apology. Sarah had emailed me the previous day, saying she got drunk at a class reunion and stayed at a friend's house. But this morning, she came back with Mike, revealing that her story about the friend was a complete lie. The class reunion was also a lie, just an excuse for the two to meet secretly. They had been betraying me, meeting up behind my back for who knows how long. Yesterday, Sarah told Mike that she was pregnant. Feeling overwhelmed by Sarah's crying, Mike decided to come clean with me, and brought her along this morning. I questioned whether the baby was really Mike's, but given how busy I'd been with wedding preparations and work, I hadn't been intimate with Sarah recently. Concluding the baby was likely his, despair overwhelmed me. Sarah's betrayal hit me hard. We were engaged in preparing for our wedding, yet in a moment of weakness, she did this. My despair turned into anger. I realized too late what kind of person Mike really was. So, how do you plan to take responsibility? I asked Mike, trying to stay calm and suppress my rising anger. Sarah was sobbing uncontrollably and couldn't speak. I found it unbelievable that she could put on such a performance after cheating on me. I wanted to cry myself, but I waited for Mike to speak. Of course, I want to marry Sarah. I want to take care of the baby and support her. So, please let me have her. I beg you. Mike apologized again, and Sarah joined him. Seeing them apologizing, I knew there was no point in arguing. Fine. Pack your things and leave before I change my mind. I turned my back on them and went to my room. Hearing them rejoice as they left made it even harder. This house, which I had bought for my future with Sarah and our child, now felt empty. I collapsed onto my bed, burying my face in the pillow. I didn't want to think about anything for a while. From then on, I vowed to live my life without them. But 12 years later, fate brought us together again. It was just after I turned 40. It all started with a letter that arrived at my home. The letter contained an invitation to a middle school reunion. I decided to attend, and on the day of the reunion, I headed to the venue mentioned in the letter. When I entered, I saw many of my former classmates, now grown up. They seemed to remember my last name. When they noticed me, they ran up to me and started talking. Hey, it's John. Long time no see. Then I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 12 years, Mike's voice, and I turned in that direction, recognizing it immediately. Noticing me, Mike walked over and said, "Can we talk outside for a bit?" and led me out of the venue. How's Sarah doing? I asked first, and Mike gave a short reply, "She's fine. The kid's grown up, in middle school now. It's like looking at our younger selves. I may not have gotten Emily, but I took Sarah from you. So I'm satisfied." Mike's true nature, which he never showed in front of Sarah, was now clear. I realized he had taken me outside to reveal this. Why are you so obsessed with taking things from others? Did I ever do something to you? You didn't do anything. It's just 12 years ago, when I saw you with Sarah in town, I realized nothing had changed since middle school. There was always a girl by your side, and I was always alone. It disgusted me that this was still true as adults. So, he decided he had to take something from me this time. I was dumbfounded, realizing it was all just petty jealousy, but at least I finally understood his reason. Mike hasn't changed at all, then or now. But this time, I beat you. You'll be single forever. As Mike looked down on me with a triumphant smile, I decided it was time to reveal the truth. Actually, there's someone I'd like you to meet. I'll call them over now, so just wait here. Someone you want to introduce to me? Mike, who had just taunted me about being single, began to look uneasy, thinking it might be a significant other. Ignoring his discomfort, I took out my phone from my suit pocket and called the person over. Soon, a woman and a young girl started walking towards us from the parking lot. The girl saw me and ran ahead, leaving the woman behind. Let me introduce you to my child. What? Mike, unable to immediately comprehend my words, asked in confusion. By then, the girl had reached me and jumped into my arms. Daddy! Say hello to this nice man, Jessica. The girl who jumped into my arms was my daughter. When I told her, she turned to Mike and gave a smile. Nice to meet you, I'm Jessica. I'm 5 years old. Oh, nice to meet you. Seeing Jessica's face, Mike was visibly shaken. Watching his reaction, I couldn't help but smirk. And then, in the next moment, Mike completely lost it. It can't be. My wife is here too. When he saw the woman who had arrived a little later, Mike's reaction intensified. The woman was my wife, Emily. Long time no see, Mike. No way, when did you two? It was after you took Sarah from me. I ran into Emily by chance in town. I began explaining as I recalled the time I reunited with Emily. After Sarah was taken by Mike, Emily and I happened to run into each other. Despite the initial awkwardness, Emily's joy at our reunion quickly broke the ice. We decided to have a meal together, reminiscing about the past and catching up on our lives. The memories from middle school came flooding back, and Emily's unchanged kindness deeply moved me. When I apologized for pushing her away back then, she said she was slightly hurt but didn't mind anymore. I thought you were just being considerate of Mike and me, she said. Thinking she hated me, her words brought us closer together. We exchanged contact information and started meeting up again, talking about books as we used to. Besides talking about books, we watched movies together, went out for meals, and had several dates. When I finally confessed my feelings that I couldn't express in middle school, Emily teared up and told me she felt the same way. Over time, we got married and had a child, and I felt truly happy. Thanks for marrying Sarah. Because of that, I met Emily again, got married, and have a child. I owe you one. I told Mike with as much sarcasm as I could muster, and he stormed off in a rage. I hoped this would teach him to stop taking things from others. I had told Emily about what Mike did to me in the past, so she agreed to help with this little revenge during our reunion. Getting back at Mike by showing him I was married to Emily, whom he once had a crush on, seemed like the perfect revenge. Satisfied with the outcome, I felt a sense of closure. Emily, looking in the direction Mike had run off, expressed concern. Is Mike going to be okay? Jessica looks a bit shocked. She said this while comforting our daughter. Knowing how stubborn he was, I figured Mike would be fine, but Jessica, not used to seeing an adult lose control like that, hid behind Emily. It's okay now. The scary man is gone. I gently reassured Jessica, and she smiled with relief. Then, holding hands with Jessica, we walked back into the reunion venue. We enjoyed the reunion. A while later, we received news from a classmate about Mike. Apparently, he had divorced his wife, Sarah. Upon learning about our marriage, Mike became self-destructive, frequenting nightclubs every night. This infuriated Sarah, who then demanded a divorce and left him, taking their child with her. Mike, who had mocked me thinking I was single, now found himself alone. What he thought about this turn of events, we never knew. Years later, Jessica became a middle school student and started attending our alma mater. After the entrance ceremony, we took a commemorative photo under a cherry blossom tree. This brings back memories. This is where your dad and I met. Back then, he was so awkward and couldn't admit he liked me. Can you not mention that to Jessica? It's embarrassing. Remembering it made me feel like my face was on fire. Even though I was just being cautious, I didn't want my child to think I was a coward. As we reminisced, Jessica spoke up. Because you and Mom met, that's how I was born, right? I'm so happy to be your child. Thank you. I love you. Jessica, with a big smile on her face, expressed her gratitude to us. I silently wished for her life to continue to be filled with happiness.